So, some actual good news for once. In this segment, we're going to be talking about the Labour Party actually doing alright in one of the polls, the opinion poll. And so, normally, YouGov polls I found are more reliable. That's just my opinion. They were pretty good in I think the last two elections, I'm going to say. Or at least the last one, anyways. The 2019 one, which was heartbreaking. But, nonetheless, 3 point gap, not bad. And, this is pretty much off the back of Dominic Raab's failures, I'm going to say. Because Dominic Raab looked very, very stupid. And now it looks like the case that he's potentially briefing against Boris Johnson, saying Boris Johnson allowed him a few more days in Cyprus, I think it was. And Boris Johnson briefing saying that Boris Johnson had asked Dominic Raab to come back. It was Raab that looked like he defied orders. But the thing was, had Raab defied orders, he should be sacked then. But he's not going to be, because I think Boris Johnson did give him a couple extra days to sun himself before he had to come back. That's what seems to be the case anyways. But, 3 points, man. 3 points, check that out. That's not a big gap. And the thing is, the Tories are going to be panicking now. The Tories are going to be panicking because Boris Johnson's pretty low in the polls. And this puts, any chance of a snap election kind of in the bin, really, because they're not going to risk it. You've got an 80-seat majority now. Why would you risk it in a general? You're not going to gain any more seats. You still have about 3 more years until you have to call another one. So why would you risk it? At least, 3 years. Generally, you call the election a year before it's meant to happen to alleviate any potential problems that could happen. But in this case, it's, we got some good news for once, man. People, we should be fairly happy, especially since Labour haven't actually done much to warrant being this high in the polls. Labour put out very little policies. Keir Starmer has looked very good against Dominic Raab and Boris Johnson and the rest of the cronies in PMQs regarding the situation in Afghanistan. So that has definitely made him look semi-competent, at least, if he starts offering some solutions. Boris Johnson could be in real trouble here. If we look at the polls here, Boris Johnson's approval rating, he's at, I don't know how to phrase it, it's not a minus 55, but he's at 55 people, 55% of people see him in a bad light. This is according to YouGov as well. That's off the 2nd of August. So yeah, 2nd of August, I think this is the most recent poll I could actually find about Boris Johnson's specific polling data in terms of his favourability. So maybe into next month we'll actually see what it is during August. But could you imagine 2nd of August, without all the stuff going on in Afghanistan, his approval rating, he's at a badly 55%. That's going to be way higher, I think. You might see him go into the 60s, maybe the 70s over the stuff going on in Afghanistan, which is truly shocking stuff, considering that if you look at, when was this, April 2020, when I probably announced the first lockdown around then, where he actually looked like he knew what he was doing. His approval rating is at 66%, and in the space of a year, it's tanked. Now, I don't think Starmer's favourability rating is that high in itself, but, if we look at the guy who could potentially replace Boris Johnson, Rishi Sunak, his favourability isn't that high either. He's only at 39%, with, a fifth of people don't even know what he does, if he's doing a good job or not. So with the furlough scheme ending, and with the economy still struggling, in part down to Brexit, it's going to be interesting to see how people favour, Rishi Sunak. He's still a popular guy, but the simple fact is he's at about 39%, 40%, which is not great, considering that Boris Johnson... Well, I say that, but, if you look at the general election, Boris Johnson was at around the 40s, in terms of his favourability, but Corbyn was at a way lower number. So if Starmer's approval rating can go high, I don't have it at hand if we just Google it actually. So Starmer's approval rating, on the same sort of 59% is not great. He needs to really work on that. If you look at it in April, sort of the lowest that it's been at was in sort of November, I think, was that... trying to remember now what specifically could have caused this stuff to be so low. But if Starmer can actually come out with some good policies, he might be able to bring that number down to the 40s, and that would put him around where Sunak is. So Boris Johnson still somehow a bit more popular than Keir Starmer. But if Keir Starmer can bring that number down, the Tories are going to start panicking, because in terms of the actual polls, in terms of the the election numbers. They're at 39% and the Labour Party are at 36%. So Labour have done really well in terms of the party polls, but if Starmer can actually bring down his disapproval numbers, which shouldn't be too hard considering how high it is, I think Boris Johnson will be scared. I think the Tory party in general will be scared because Labour are yet to go into conference. That's going to happen the end of September. Sort of, let's have a look quickly on the calendar. Around, I think it's this week here, the end of September, the last week, kind of from there to the 29th, which is there. So about 4 or 5 days. If Starmer can start offering some decent policies, he might be in with a shot because, the last thing I've seen is, Starmer put out, this article, this interview, and he offers nothing. He talks about the big Labour wins, so Attlee, Wilson and Blair, saying that the Labour Party in those moments glimpsed the future and a forward-looking programme. Well, so did Jeremy Corbyn, so that's a pretty weak argument. Starmer said as the summer tour had left him believing that some of the outright hostility towards the party was subsiding. Corbyn was deeply unpopular, despite some of his policies being good and actually popular. Here we go. That's going to be an interesting one. We'll go for that one when the time comes. For Labour, what struck Starmer was that people wanted to talk and people wanted to engage, that they were open to the Labour Party. Now he's not suggesting for a minute that people who voted Tory want to switch, but it's possible. But the thing is, his numbers, his disapproval ratings are very high. This is off the start of August though, so with all the stuff going on and the fact that he does look far more competent than Boris Johnson and Dominic Raab does. He looked very, very good in PMQs. The problem is he needs to start putting more of that content out on his social media and actually start talking to people, going on the press more, doing more interviews and offering actual solutions to the situations in Afghanistan. That's what he needs to be doing right now. Because you can't just keep criticising, you need to offer tangible solutions. Because once the media asks you the question, what would you do differently? If you don't have an answer, you look very stupid. Looking at you, Lisa Nandy. Starmer signalled he may be preparing to make a more explicit departure from the 10 pledges. That's going to annoy a lot of people within the Labour Party, the members, but you don't win an election through the members, you win it through the general population. So him doing this is very frustrating for me especially, but we need this guy to win, and I don't want to see a new Labour kind of front. I want to see him nationalising certain industries such as trains, maybe energy. I want to see that, maybe not the internet yet, but that's going to be one on the list, no doubt, that should be nationalised. But I want to see some movement towards that area of looking at nationalising key industries. If I don't see that, I'm going to be incredibly disappointed. Eventually I want to see a 4-day work week, but I wouldn't mind if you just put in some more bank holidays. That would be a good point. But yeah, pledges including abolishing tuition fees, a decent idea, increasing tax on the richest, and backing common ownership of key utilities. Moving away from them will mean Starmer faces anger within his own ranks. Again, these pledges are good. Higher taxes on the rich. If you don't go for that, you look very stupid. A windfall tax is a good idea, would have been a good idea on these companies. The fact that he didn't back a corporation tax rate increase shows he's a bit naive in that respect, which I don't appreciate. That's something he should have been pushing for, seeing as a corporation tax is on the profits of a business. That's not hard to understand, Starmer. He says, obviously, as we come out of the pandemic, the scale of the challenge that we now face, that we now confront is bigger than even that back in 2019, which is true. If anything, the scale of the answers has to be commensurate with the challenge. So he's saying the answers, the scale of the problem is bigger than that in 2019. Therefore, the solutions had to be bigger than the ones you offered in 2019. But let's not forget, the electorate did reject a lot of the sort of nationalisation menu in the 2019 manifesto. So the best thing for him to do is look at key industries that are failing. Right, look at things like trains, look at things like energy, things that really frustrate people because of the price and the way it's run, and look at how you can nationalise those, or at least do a public option to force these companies to put down their prices to make it better for the consumer. That's the bare minimum I want, a public option. But if he doesn't do that, I'll be incredibly disappointed in Starmer. And this is his moment now. This is his big moment. The Tories are down in the polls. They look at the polls. They look at the polls, absolutely. The Tories were up in some of the other polls, I think, months gone by around, I think they were in the high 40s, the mid to high 40s. That's come down dramatically. So what Starmer has to do is Starmer has to put out a decent manifesto that's going to appeal to people, sort of working class people and lower middle class people. That's what he's got to do. Focus on the economics. Focus on how you're going to make people's lives better, how you're going to help small to medium enterprises, the ones that are abandoning trade with the EU, which is going to cause staffing problems as exports fall. You don't need as many people because productivity has fallen. So start trying to appeal to those sorts of people. Start looking at areas where you can work with the Greens and the Lib Dems. That common ground now. So when you go for a more of a progressive alliance, it makes sense you put the pieces in place. Some decent foreshadowing, good writing. That's what we need right now. But I'm happy with this so far, that the Labour Party are actually picking up in the polls, and I haven't done a lot to do that. So when they start putting out policies, if they're good and if people like them, that's going to put Labour further up in the polls. And who knows, they might be able to overtake the Tory party. But what he has to keep doing is pushing on the incompetency angle, but also saying what would he do better? What would Keir Starmer do better in this situation? How would he help resolve some of the issues in Afghanistan? How would he resolve some of the issues within the country we're facing right now when it comes to the HGV driver lorry shortage and all these other things? That's what I want to see from Starmer. And for all those people who keep saying that, oh yeah, Labour don't have to offer policy solutions because they're not in government. Well, when the media asks you the question, what would you do differently, and you don't have an answer, you look like a right mug. But anyways, I'm going to leave it there. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Like, comment, share, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you in the next one.